Bien, decía que vamos a comenzar la primera ponencia de la tarde con la intervención de Joep Vermeulen, abogado senior de la asesoría jurídica de la Autoridad Portuaria de Rotterdam. First of all, thank you very much for being here. Y yo diría que ha sido un acierto, y particularmente de Carmen, que se ha ido, que tuvo ocasión de contactarles cuando ella estuvo en una estancia en Rotterdam, invitar a estas dos personas, tanto a Joep Vermeulen como a Ton Steven, porque podremos conocer de primera mano cómo es la gestión financiera del puerto de Rotterdam. Creo que además, Joep, I'm speaking Spanish, I think you're going to you have a picture, I think, or something, or film or something like that?
Yeah, I had a short film prepared, but it's not working. It's
okay. Bueno, creo que va a ser suficientemente claro, que lo vamos a poder seguir perfectamente a través de la pantalla. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for inviting me to this seminar and to give me the opportunity to elaborate on, to my personal opinion, one of the most successful ports in the world. I'm happy to do that, and I hope it makes a nice contribution to this seminar. As you said, my name is Joep Vermeulen. I work as a legal counsel inside the Port Authority, and I mainly focus on governmental affairs and policy, and especially planning and zoning law. I'm not an expert on tax law. I'm not an expert on financial constructions. However, I do know a few things in general about my company that I can tell you about, and I know a few things about its legal structure as well that I can tell you in particular about. My presentation consists of a few elements. I wanted to start as a teaser with a short film. Sadly, I cannot play it here because it's for some reason not inside my presentation, so I'm sorry for that. But I'll give you the most important facts and figures of our port anyway. After that, I'm going to take you through some of the general port management models that are available in the world, and then I'll zoom in on the situation in Rotterdam and the landlord model and how we have organized things within that model. And one of the most important things in Rotterdam is the corporatization we had in 2004. I will tell you about that, and I will tell you about the legal structure my company has. And then I'll take you through a few of the financial highlights of our company and our port. And eventually I'll say just a few quick remarks with regard to taxation, and after that Mr. Stevens will take you further within that subject. Well, this was supposed to be the film, but it's not. I can try it just one more time. No, it's not playing. Well, here you can have a brief overview of the development of our port over time. During the course of the 20th century, there's been a vast expansion of our port from the center of town, completely on the right side, to the west in the sea. The distance covered by our port, to give you a notice of its magnitude, is 42 kilometers. The latest expansion we have. Yes, 42 kilometers. Yeah. The latest expansion of our port is the second Maasvlakte, which is on the yellow part on the outside. And on the next slide, you can see the way it looks right now. Here you have an overview of the second Maasvlakte, and you can see that a few plots are already constructed. The sea defense is already constructed, and there are already 3 parties that have contracts with us, 2 container terminals that are operational at the moment and still testing their operations, and well, within a few months, completely in operation. You see a big part of the second Maasvlakte that is still water. Within the future, it's supposed to be land as well, but for now, we also due to a global economy, we leave it water, and we're going to use it for harboring offshore constructions and work on offshore constructions. If we take a quick look at closer? Okay. If we take a quick look at the most important figures of our port, you can see it's just over 30,000 acres big, half of it net land plots for our clients. In total, the Port of Rotterdam employs 150,000 people. Its total added value to the Dutch economy is about 10.3 billion euros every year. We have a throughput of approximately 450 million tons, 12 million TEU. The depth of the majority of our port is up to 24 meters, so no tidal restrictions for even the biggest ships. In total, there are 80 terminals and 9 power plants, and not on the slide, but also important, 5 refineries. In total, we have 3,000 companies in our port area, and the Port of Rotterdam is the largest port in Europe. If we zoom in on the throughput, you can see that liquid bulk, crude oil and mineral oil products, and containers are the most important segments in our port. And this slide also shows you the division between import and export within Rotterdam. Here you can see the division between all the different segments. So 45% of what we do in Rotterdam is liquid bulk. And there are a few challenges with that, since, well, economy is changing, and oil maybe in the future will not be the biggest thing we'll handle. So we are at the moment thinking about maybe reorganizing a few parts of our port to keep up the throughput. Well, in the world, you can see that Rotterdam is no longer the biggest port in the world. We were up until 2004, but since then we have been overtaken by some Chinese ports and Singapore as well. However, ladies and gentlemen, we may not be the biggest port. We're still the greatest port, and that's not my personal opinion, but also the opinion of the World Economic Forum. The quality of our port infrastructure is among the best in the world. I will now tell you a few things about the different port management models that there are in the world. The two most extreme forms, the one on top, the service port, and the one on the bottom, the private ports. I will not elaborate on these, other than that you find service ports in India, and you can find private ports in the UK and in New Zealand. I will tell you a few things about the two port management models in between those two extremes, the tool port and the landlord port. The landlord port is the model we use in Holland, and I think in a majority of Europe as well. And a tool port model is used especially in France. The biggest difference between a landlord port and a tool port are concerning the superstructure. In a landlord port, the superstructure is managed privately, and in a tool port, it is managed publicly. And that means that the superstructure and the cargo handling equipment as well are owned and manned by the port authority. And also the most port services like towing, mooring, pilotage are done by the port authority. That last part, the port services, that is not really the problem with the tool port model, but the problem with the tool port model, the essential problem with that model is the way the superstructure is organized. In essence, there is a split operational responsibility here. You have the port authority that operates the cargo handling equipment, whereas the private cargo handling firm has signed the contract with the ship owner and the cargo owner. And therefore, he's the one that in a contractual way is responsible for the cargo handling, but he's not the one that's taking care of it. So he's not fully in control of everything he wants to be in control of. And well, the most economics say that this is not a very efficient way of handling cargo. And therefore, I think the tool port model is declining, and most of the tool ports are trying to make a change towards the landlord model. However, there are situations where a tool port model can be very handy, and especially in a situation where you have maybe a greenfield and you want to establish a new port, or maybe you want to change an old port to a new port, and you have a private sector which is not financially liable, not bankable, so to say. If that's the case, then a tool port model might come in handy, because that gives the government an opportunity to invest, not only in the port infrastructure, but also to invest in the superstructure. And that means that the private enterprises that are responsible for the cargo handling can easily grow into their organization, and then after a few years, when they start making money, it is possible to change the tool port model into a landlord model and just sell the superstructure to the private operators, and then you have, in the end, a landlord model as well. Well, as I said, the landlord model is the model we use in Rotterdam. That means that we are responsible for the development, the maintenance and the management of the port infrastructure, and that we are responsible for the planning and the coordination of the maritime traffic in the port, and also on the waterways that access our port. But we are not responsible for the industries in the port area. We're not responsible for the cargo handling, not for the mooring and towing, not for pilotage, and not for dock work. This is all being taken care of by different organizations, not by us. Of course, we communicate with these organizations, but there's no formal responsibility on these issues. And that means that within this model there are two types of income, and that's probably here the same case in Spain or in Portugal. You have the rental fees from the leased real estate, and you have the infrastructural charges like the port fees and the port dues for the use of our port and its infrastructure. To give you a view on these incomes, we had in 2040 over 300 million of incomes from rental fees, 337 million to be precise, and from the port fees we had also a little bit over 306 million euros. So in total this is 660 million euros in 2014 income for our port authority, and that was 639 in 2013, so it's still going up. If you take a look at our port, it is important that to know that we have been corporatized in 2004. Before 2004, the Port of Rotterdam was a part of the municipality of Rotterdam and was just a regular governmental organization, so to say. And I think this is still the case here in Spain for the most ports, that they are part of the government. In Rotterdam, they saw before 2004 that competition between ports was increasing. They also saw that market powers of shipping traders and cargo handling companies were increasing, and for that matter, there was a need to act more quickly to a changing global economy, and we started to find out that being part of a municipality and being part of a political theater, so to say, is not very helpful if you want to change the way you work inside a port. It's easier to be more in a corporate model to do these things and to have your long-term strategy planned out rather than depend on politicians that change almost every 4 years and sometimes even sooner. And this does not really give you the possibility to set out a course for a long-term strategy. So that was one of the main reasons we started to think about corporatizing the Port of Rotterdam, just for this modernization of the corporate governance. There were a few financial and commercial considerations as well. If you are a corporation, you have independent access to the capital market. That would make it more easy for us to invest in the port. Well, you have this, of course, corporate identity when you are corporatized, and this gives you stronger branding options throughout the world. And the corporatization, that was also a very important part, made it possible for the state to become shareholder of our company as well. And that gave the state the opportunity to invest money in Maasvlakte 2. I will tell you a bit more about that later on. And the last reason were the economical developments. I already told you that at first, the concentration of enterprises in the logistics chain and the increasing market power that goes with that. And so therefore, the decision was made to corporatize the Port of Rotterdam, and a few years later, at first the municipality was holding all the shares, so 100%, and after a few years when we started to create the second Maasvlakte, the state became a shareholder as well, and they've invested for around 700 million euros in the Maasvlakte 2, not in the plots of land that we are going to lease out, but that money was used to make the sea defense surrounding the second Maasvlakte. So eventually there was no state aid discussion or something, because, well, it's non-specific user infrastructure, and as you all know, that's a type of infrastructure that governments can put money in without being qualified as state aid. To be certain, we had this approved by Brussels, and they concluded as well that there was no state aid involved. So after that, the state holds 30% of our shares, and the municipality of Rotterdam the other 70%. The Port of Rotterdam, since its corporatization, is a public limited company, and but this does not necessarily mean that we operate completely separate from the government. We have, of course, a lot of public tasks that we take care of, especially with regard to the maritime traffic control and management. And there had to be found a solution for a public limited company, a corporation, to exploit public tasks, because that's not normally possible in Holland. What we did was we created an unofficial governmental officer, which is the Harbour Master of Rotterdam, and he's been giving his authority on all the fields he has to operate in mandate by either the state when he deals with traffic on the waterways that are accessing our port, or given the authority by the municipality where it concerns the port itself. When you do things in mandate, this means that you do it in name of the state or the municipality, and that means that both the municipality and the state wanted to make certain that the responsibility for the way he exploits his public tasks is not towards our board, not towards the board of the corporation of the Port of Rotterdam, but he's directly responsible towards the municipality and towards the state. And this all has not been set out in a law or something, but there is a Harbour Master Covenant which is signed by the state, the municipality, our organization, and the Harbour Master itself. The only thing our port does is employ and facilitate the Harbour Master. So we have to pay for his public tasks, and we have to pay him more or less what he demands. Of course, there are a few checks and balances, but what he deems necessary for his public tasks needs to be provided by the public limited company. If you take a quick look at... oh wait, maybe I forgot to tell you a few things. Oh yeah, I'll just go back to this slide. I'm sorry. What I wanted to tell you is that through this system there is public interference when it's when the public tasks of our Harbour Master are concerned, but there is no real direct political interference if you look at the corporate part of the Port of Rotterdam. The strategy and the day-to-day business can be done outside the political theater. However, the municipality of Rotterdam has its ways of influence, since it has the majority of the shares. So the really important decisions we make can be controlled by them. So it's not that they just gave the port away. They have their influence, but in a more corporate setting and without any direct political interference. And that comes in very handy in a world of competition between ports, and when you need to react fast on changing global economies. Well, this is a slide that shows you how some of the financial, how the money goes around. The shareholders on the left side, our company, which is called in Dutch Havenbedrijf Rotterdam NV, in the middle. That's the Port of Rotterdam Authority. You see the banks that credit us, Dutch banks, but also the European Investment Bank, especially for Maasvlakte 2. They've invested, or they've credited us with a lot of money. Not sure about the total amount, but it was a lot. And this money is invested by us within the port infrastructure, of course, and also within the projects of the companies that are inside the port area. For instance, if terminals are created, we invest in the cables, we invest in the jetties, and they eventually rent it out from us. But they invest in superstructure and buildings needed for their companies, and they have their own project finance investors for that. Well, this picture shows you the way the money goes round. The picture on the right side is in Dutch, so I'll try to translate it for you. On the left side, you have the harbor. You see two types of income going to our company. Our company is the middle part, the middle blue line, and you see our financial obligations on the right. So you see that a lot of the money that comes out of the harbor by rental fees and by port fees, those are the two money streams on the upper side. We try to maximum reinvest this money in the port. A bit of the money needs to be used by the harbor master. That's the word havenmeester. Then the second one is investeringen, that's investments in the port. And the last one, onderhoud, is maintenance. Then you see that we have internal costs. Those are the costs of our company itself. My salary, for instance. And on the right side, you have the financial obligations, which start out with interest for the loans we have, the dividend towards the municipality, and the dividend towards the state, which is at this moment at a lower level and will be increased in 2025. And the last one is tax that we pay. Well, this financial framework is based on an A rating, and that, of course, is important for optimal conditions to go out for credit, to seek for creditors, and to invest that money in the port. And it's also obliged in Holland for state holdings, dus companies that where the shares are held at least partly by the state, they should have an A rating. That's obligatory. If you take a more detailed look at our investments in the port, you can see that they have gone up over the years from 2008 to 2012. That has to do with the realization of Maasvlakte 2. For now, these investments go down a bit, and we try to maximize at this point the investments in the existing port area. And in total, we invest at around 250 million euros every year in the port. Well, these are the investments by port segment. Well, it speaks for itself. And then finally some concluding remarks on the tax challenge that we have. We pay tax, of course, you saw that in the previous slide, but we only pay tax for the value-added tax. And at this point, our company does not pay any corporate income tax. That's normal in Holland for state-owned companies. But there is a discussion with Brussels about this exemption, whether or not this exemption is in accordance with the EU treaty. Mr. Stevens will tell you more about that. The only thing I'd like to state out is that for our company, of course, it is very important that all ports in Europe are treated equally with regard to state aid, And well, there should be a level playing field, of course. And to our personal opinion, that's not always the case. And there are parts in Europe where ports are don't need to earn the money they invest in the ports themselves, but are given this money quite easily by the states. And well, that has to change first. And when there is a level playing field, then of course our company is glad to pay corporate income tax, of course. Well, thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a nice conclusion to this seminar.